Hey,
Hey, how you doing, Charlie?
good, good.
Well, thank you so much again for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. I know the rest of the team does too. So, yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, we're so excited to have launched Litecoin on SFOX. Really excited to get your input on some stuff. Like I said, we're obviously not pressed, so I want you to be as happy with this as we are, and we'll definitely send along a draft to you before we publish anything.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
But so, with that in mind, uh, I have a set of questions that was sourced both from me and other really excited members of the SFOX team for you. So I figured since we got 30 minutes on the clock, I'd just jump in and we can go wherever the conversation takes us. Sound good?
Sure. Is this what is this for again?
Good, yeah. So I'll give you a bit more context. So what we're hoping to ultimately generate from this is a post for our blog. Uh,
Okay.
the context is it will just be an interview with you pegged to sort of the ongoing content we're releasing as part of the Litecoin launch on SFOX.
Yep. Sure.
Yeah, is there anything else I can answer for you before we jump in?
No, no.
Awesome. So I figured we'd start at the beginning with just some more context on what inspired you to start building Litecoin in the first place.
Um, so initially it was mostly just for fun. Wanted to kind of play around with the Bitcoin code base. And then I also wanted to create an altcoin that was better than all the other altcoins out there at that time. Um, One of the main goals is to launch it in a very fair manner. So no pre-mines, make it so that people can mine from the start. So like I didn't have any advantage over anyone else. And then also to create something that complemented Bitcoin. So that's where the silver to Bitcoin's gold came about.
Yeah, maybe it'd be helpful to just go into that a bit more because I've seen that idea of it being the silver to Bitcoin's gold cited everywhere, and I feel like oftentimes in media people mean different things by that. So could you just elaborate a bit about what you meant when you initially said it and how you see that relationship between Litecoin and Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I always saw that in order for Bitcoin to kind of stay decentralized and secure, it can't be kind of the best of both worlds in terms of being able to handle um, move large amounts of money and also small amounts of money, because both transactions would pay the same amount of fees. So you can't kind of you have to make trade-offs, right? So if Bitcoin is focused on moving large amounts of money, then the fees will be high and the security will be high. And Litecoin can act as a complement where it can be used for smaller movements of money and have lower fees.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Jumping around a bit, but still in that early history, I was wondering why you decided to join Coinbase when you did, as opposed to just working more solely on Litecoin and focusing on that at that moment in time.
Yeah, mainly because I realized in order for, well, I kind of believe in cryptocurrency as a whole, Bitcoin and Litecoin and others, and not just like Litecoin. So in order to help kind of cryptocurrency succeed, I realized it's important to make it very easy for people to buy and sell or get into Bitcoin, at least initially. So I wanted to kind of help that out. So that's why I joined Coinbase. It was an up and coming startup that was focused on making Bitcoin easy to use.
Sure, and I imagine that given the relationship that you just spelled out between Litecoin and Bitcoin, having the opportunity to invite more people into the crypto space, even through Bitcoin, would also be a way of helping Litecoin's community. Did you see it that way as well?
Yeah, like if Bitcoin doesn't go anywhere, doesn't succeed, Litecoin's not going to do anything. So it was important to help Bitcoin out first.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. As you reflect on the history of Litecoin, given that it's amazingly been around for about 7 years at this point, does any particular moment or set of moments stand out when you were really worried that it would fail?
Um, was I worried that it's actually really hard to kill a decentralized cryptocurrency for it to die, right? If there's one or two people supporting it, it will survive. I think for a few years, like between like 2013, 2014, 2000, around that time, like Litecoin has been pretty stale, and I've kind of been focused on Bitcoin, right? I was working at Coinbase. So I wasn't really paying too much attention and trying to make sure that it was doing well, but it managed to do pretty well and came back strong.
Sure. So thinking more about your particular role in relationship to Litecoin, right? One of the other things that I see as fascinating about the relationship between Bitcoin and Litecoin is that, on the one hand, you have Bitcoin that has a totally anonymous creator, right? And then on the other hand, we have Litecoin where you have been the very public face of it for a long time, right? So I was wondering if we could get some of your reflections on what you see as both the advantages and the challenges to being the public face of a really big altcoin such as Litecoin.
Yeah, I think for good reasons, Satoshi remained anonymous and kind of left the project. In hindsight, I should have done the same thing. I mean, it's being a public face for a decentralized cryptocurrency is kind of like an oxymoron. But there are definitely advantages. For example, last year or 2 years ago, when I saw that Bitcoin was having all this trouble with activating SegWit, when I saw SegWit being such a amazing feature that there was all this FUD around it, I realized I could help out by kind of push Litecoin towards getting SegWit activated on Litecoin. And being like a creator, I was able to kind of make that happen. Whereas with Bitcoin, it's really hard for a decentralized currency to actually kind of adopt something new when there are parties that are against it, right? So it's hard to figure out whether consensus is reached. Whereas with Litecoin, it's much easier with me being around. So that's definitely an advantage. Disadvantage is obviously it's more centralized. So if anyone wants to target Litecoin, they could attack me, right? So that's definitely could be improved. So I think moving forward, eventually Litecoin, I kind of would have to step away. I'm talking about like years down the road when Litecoin is becoming more used and more of a real world currency, right? It wouldn't make sense for the creator to be around kind of still dictating things. So it's the difference between like a benevolent dictator and a democracy, right? Democracy is definitely a lot more inefficient, but it's more decentralized.
Sure. Yeah, I really like that perspective on it. And I imagine that, I know from what you've said about it in the past that part of selling all of your Litecoin was preparing to ultimately step away from that position of kind of centralized leadership, right? I know that when you spoke about selling your stake in the past, around when it was happening, you talked in pretty nebulous terms about other ways in which you would be incentivized to continue working towards Litecoin's success, despite the fact you didn't really own any coins anymore, right? So I was wondering, to the degree that you're willing to talk about it, if you could expand a bit on what you see as those other incentives and driving factors that keep you motivated to help Litecoin succeed now that you don't really have a coin-wise stake in it.
Mm-hmm. Well, these days I'm not motivated by financial gains. So I'm spending all my time on Litecoin because it's kind of like my baby, right? I created it. I wanted to see it succeed. And if it does well, I get pride, fame, whatever, right? And I'm spending all my time on it, and time is worth more than money. Is more valuable than money to me. So, I mean, I'm definitely like really fully invested in it, in Litecoin's success. So there's no need for me to have a financial stake in it. It doesn't really add that much, to be honest. Like when I had my Litecoins, I'm actually working harder right now than I worked previously on Litecoin. Right. When I had my Litecoins, I was spending most of my time on Coinbase.
That's an interesting perspective. Yeah, for sure. Uh, Changing gears a little bit again, I'm wondering which coins or projects in general you personally view as competitors to Litecoin. I mean, I know we've seen kind of the rise of Bitcoin Cash in the last year or so, so you're welcome to talk about that a little bit, or if you see other interesting new projects as things that might be competing with Litecoin.
Mm, so my kind of focus is on what I see, where I see cryptocurrency bring value to the world is on the properties of sound money, right? So decentralization is inefficient, but it gives you, it creates a form of money that we've never previously seen before, where it's decentralized, it's censorship resistant, it's immutable. Nobody can inflate it away. Nobody can counterfeit it, right? So it's a form of money that is really very powerful, and that's something we've never seen, and that's why it's valuable. So coming from that angle, there aren't that many projects in my mind that are kind of towards that sound money aspect of things. Bitcoin is obviously the soundest form of money around, and Litecoin, I would say, would be second. And then another project that I'm interested in is Monero. I think adding a bit of privacy fungibility is something that's missing from Bitcoin and Litecoin. I think it's very, very much needed. Other than like these three big ones, I'm really not kind of focused on anything else. I do agree that Bitcoin Cash is definitely a competitor, but they're coming from an angle of like, I would say like PayPal 2.0. So they do everything on chain. So transaction throughput will be high, but then they're sacrificing decentralization, right? It becomes harder and harder to run a node, and then less and less users will be running nodes. It'll be up to corporations and big miners that are running nodes, and then before you know it, it's centralized around those big players. That's definitely something I'm not interested in. So, and I think in the end, sound money would win. Like, you can always compete on a centralized. You can compete with like Square Cash or PayPal. You won't be able to win in terms of transaction throughput because you're competing with a centralized system. And then if you don't have any valuable properties like sound money, then what's the point?
Sure, yeah, I really like that perspective. While we're on the topic of decentralization, and I like the emphasis that you put on it in terms of Litecoin's value and the value of cryptocurrency more generally, I really feel like, especially with these decentralized networks, it's that much more important to build a really vibrant community around the given network and given crypto asset, right? So I was wondering if you could speak to whatever efforts you might be making or what you see as the path forward to continue to build the community around Litecoin.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's a complicated topic. Like, it's unclear to me like how important community is for a project to succeed. Right? If you look at it, like, there's no community around the US dollar or like fiat currencies, right? So cryptocurrency has like a community. I mean, I do a lot with it, mainly through Twitter, right? I have a huge following on Twitter, and I kind of try to push my vision and my narrative and what I see as what's valuable and how Litecoin and Bitcoin should evolve. But on the other hand, like, if it really does become like a worldwide decentralized currency, the community will be the whole globe, right? It won't just be a few thousand or tens of thousands of people on Twitter or on Reddit.
Sure, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. Although, I mean, one of the reasons why I ask and think it's especially important maybe for Litecoin, and correct me if you see it otherwise, but it seems like a lot of the Litecoin adoption we've seen thus far is kind of piggybacking on things like BitPay, where merchants are deciding to accept cryptocurrency and Bitcoin more generally. right? So I feel like maybe for that reason, it might be important for something like Litecoin to build its own community such that it could eventually become a worldwide phenomenon. Or do you not see it that way?
Yeah, I mean, the end goal is for Litecoin and Bitcoin to be used for payments, right? To use as real world money, movement of value. Right now, like 90+% of people are in it for as a speculative investment, right? They just put money into Bitcoin thinking that in the future it'll be useful and the value will go up and they'll make more money. So I'm kind of pushing for that future. So it's a chicken egg problem in terms of like merchant adoption and people using it, right? If there's no one accepting Litecoin, then people won't be using it. If people aren't using it, then there's no reason for merchants to accept it. So I'm definitely pushing towards that. I mean, we have like a movement called like Pay with Litecoin, hashtag Pay with Litecoin. It's a grassroots movement that people are kind of getting other people to go out there to pay with Litecoin to convince their local merchants to accept it and to actually use it, right? So if they use it, merchants will see people using it and asking for it, and they'll accept it and kind of try to kickstart this virtuous cycle.
Sure. Yeah. You know, especially on Twitter and social media, grassroots movements can be so effective for that kind of thing. I wanted to ask you a couple kind of more technical questions about how you see Litecoin evolving, and especially with regard to its relationship to Bitcoin. So two of the biggest problems or challenges that I see for something like Bitcoin right now that it's been facing, right, are issues of scalability and volatility in its price point, right? So I know you've said some interesting things in the past about how Litecoin might be able to help with Bitcoin scalability, but I'm wondering just whether you see Litecoin encountering those same problems in the future, and if so, how you think it'll deal with them, and if not, why not?
So on one hand, Litecoin has 4 times the effective block space compared to Bitcoin, so it can linearly better handle the scalability. But in the end, we still need like second layer solutions like Lightning Network to help Bitcoin and Litecoin scale. And with Lightning Network, Bitcoin and Litecoin can become interchangeable with like atomic swap. You can send Bitcoin, the recipient can receive Litecoin, vice versa. So that makes it like very easy for Litecoin to help Bitcoin out in terms of handling the transaction volume. So I think we'll see if Bitcoin would need like a on-chain, like a block size increase, because for second layer solutions, you still have to settle on-chain, and it may still be not enough block space for that, right? So it's yet to, we'll find out, I guess. We'll figure it out. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I think the goal is to move a lot of these like smaller payments, like buying coffee and stuff, or microtransactions, onto off-chain solutions, or like Lightning second layer solutions, so that the base layer can still be as decentralized and as secure as possible.
And how about in terms of price volatility? Do you worry that that'll be something that serves as an obstacle to using Litecoin for everyday transactions?
It does. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people aren't spending it because the price is down and they don't want to sell at this low point. Also, it's hard for merchants. Merchants don't price things in like nominal Litecoin terms. So it's always priced in US dollar and it gets converted to Litecoin. So it's definitely complicates things. I think the volatility for Bitcoin Litecoin will solve itself over time. It'll become less and less volatile. And we're seeing that. If you look at the statistics, it's definitely less volatile now to a small degree than previously. And I think as the price goes up, the reason why it's so volatile is because one day people may think Bitcoin will become the world reserve currency. The next day, like Mt. Gox gets hacked for hundreds of $1 million, and people are like, this is crap, this is useless. No one can secure their own coins, so it won't go anywhere. So that's why like it's so volatile. But over time, as the infrastructure gets built out, more hardware wallet solutions get built out, and it becomes easier to hold your coins, and becomes easier to acquire coins and spend coins everywhere and Lightning never gets built out, then I think the price will go up, and then it will kind of settle on the true value of cryptocurrency. And we don't know where that is, but it will become less volatile.
Sure, that's really helpful to hear. You talked a minute ago about the block time for Litecoin and how it's significantly faster than Bitcoin's. I'm wondering, do you ever consider making the block time even faster? And what are kind of the pros and cons to shifting the block time to make it, something like half a minute rather than 2.5 minutes?
So the faster the block times, the more inefficient mining will become, where you have orphans, right? If two miners find the same block, then like one of them will get orphaned, and then it will be wasted work. So the downside of that obviously is the miner whose block got orphaned lost out on the work they did, the value of the work they did. The other downside is that it makes it such that whoever wants to attack the network can do it for less kind of cost than the network is actually paying, right? If like 50% of blocks get orphaned, then the network would be like, let's say 100 gigahash. The attacker only needs 50 gigahash to attack the network because 50% of blocks are orphaned, whereas the attacker would not have any blocks orphaned, so they can build a longer chain with less work. So that's definitely an issue. But in the end, like, you won't be able to, like, I think 10 minutes is a bit of an overkill. It's a long time. There's also an issue where if like half the internet goes down for a net split, right? And then for like 5 minutes, and then they come back up, and then they're on two different kind of like the blockchain would have split into two, and then they would have to reconcile. So that could cause double spend and stuff like that. So having a longer confirmation time helps with that, makes that problem less. But I think 2.5 minutes works fine. You will never be able to do like instant on-chain confirmation. It's a trade-off, right? If you do that, you'll have tons of orphans. So I don't foresee like Litecoin or changing that. And I don't see the value of that. I think second layer solutions like Lightning Network will provide like instant payments, and that's really what we need.
Got it. That's really helpful. The last technical question, we had some people who were curious about what you see as the most interesting applications of Litecoin's scripting language, given that it's even simpler than Bitcoin's.
It's not, given that it's what?
Simpler than Bitcoin's?
It's actually the same as Bitcoin's.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
I misunderstood.
Yeah. So in terms of like applications for the scripting language, it's limited, right? It's not like Ethereum where you can do pretty much anything. I think like one of the best use of it today is like Lightning networks, right? Doing payment channels, hash time lock contracts, and then settling that, and then having a payment go through multiple nodes and have all that be kind of confirmed and backed by the base layer using scripts. I think that's really powerful and a really good use case example of how scripts are being used.
Got it. Couple last questions. So first, again, given how long Litecoin has been around now, how has your perspective as its creator changed about it over time?
So to give a little perspective, when I first found out about Bitcoin, the whole market cap of Bitcoin was $200 million. And then when I launched Litecoin, the market cap of Bitcoin is like, I think $50 million. And then, so if you compare that, Litecoin today is what, $3-4 billion market cap. It's like already like 10x more than Bitcoin was when I first created Litecoin. So that totally totally unexpected, right? When I created Litecoin, it was just for fun. So initially, it's kind of like a fun little side project, and then it kind of became its own thing, right? It became, when it hit like $1 billion market cap, I stepped back and realized like, wow, this is crazy, right? Litecoin has $1 billion market cap. It's no longer like a fun little side project anymore, right? So I had to be extra careful about, because it's people's money. So if I screw up, the network has a fork, for example, it could be really bad. So one of the things I've always kind of followed was to just keep close to Bitcoin. Bitcoin has the strongest developers in this space, and there's no reason to kind of change things, especially if I don't understand them, for the sake of changing. Right? We've seen a lot of coins like change some stuff around and then get hacked, or something blew up in their face because they didn't realize this is there for a reason. So that's why like Litecoin is kind of just following really closely to Bitcoin. So that's good and bad, right? So the bad part is it doesn't differentiate itself that much from Bitcoin. But I see it more of a benefit, where we can kind of keep the secure and the best code out there, and also be able to innovate in certain aspects where, for example, SegWit, we're able to activate SegWit first to kind of prove that the game theory aspect of SegWit works well in practice. And then we can do that for other things. For example, like in the future, I'm a big proponent of adding more fungibility to Litecoin, I think, and also Bitcoin. I think it's one of the features of sound money that is missing from Bitcoin and Litecoin. Fungibility and privacy. When you receive coins, you shouldn't be able to know like where the coins came from, right? And if you're trying to spend two outputs, you don't really care. Like right now, when you're using Bitcoin, Litecoin, if you bought like 10 Bitcoin on exchange and receive in your wallet, and you go out and spend it, if you send that output to like a friend, then that friend could see that, hey, you actually had like 10 Bitcoins. You actually had a lot of money there, right? So before you send them money, you have to actually think, should I send them this output or that output? And this is something that just makes it really, really hard to use when you have to do that. So yeah, so adding fungibility, something like confidential transaction or something else could definitely be, would be good, but it will also be very, how should I say? So there may be pushback from the community, right? It's going to be controversial because maybe an exchange might delist the coin if you add confidential transaction. We've seen exchanges in Korea were forced by the government to delist certain privacy coins because they didn't like privacy coins. So it will be stuff like that could potentially be a good kind of Litecoin could be a good test bed for.
That's great. I love that. And then the final question for you is, in terms of Litecoin or cryptocurrency more generally, what keeps you up at night right now?
What keeps me up at night? I think the recent scare definitely like gives me a wake up call. The scare of like the inflation, the bug that could potentially have an inflation in the coins, things like that, like bugs that cause network to split, to fork, and bugs that cause inflation, stuff like that it's very scary, right? For a Litecoin is small compared to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is like $100 billion currency, right? Something like that could like destroy like 90% of the value overnight. And yeah, so that stuff like that definitely keeps me up at night. Just the fact that we're running a network, at least even for Litecoin, it's worth $3-4 billion. That's a lot of money. Yeah.
Right on. Well, I think those are all my questions. Charlie, thank you again so much for your time. This has been
Sure.
really illuminating. I think I speak for everyone else here when I say that we at SFOX really are so grateful for your time and your collaboration with us. So I'll definitely shoot you a draft of this before anything goes live. So
Okay.
look
Yeah.
forward to receiving that soon. And I'll be in touch. So thank you
Okay.
again so
Sure.
much. And I hope you have a great afternoon.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Great. Thank you so much. Bye.